Welcome to Coffee Conversations. This is where Izzy and I get to really jump in on a specific topic and explore. So there's no script, there's no, we have to cover a certain amount of information. It's totally organic. And that means that we get to have fun and we get to listen to our intuition and we get to let the divine inspiration come to us while we have this conversation. That's what I love about it. And so today's conversation, coffee conversation, is going to be on intuition anxiety and how it represents in each chakra. So I'm really excited by this conversation. So I really would love for you to grab your coffee or tea or whatever drink you're drinking and jump into the conversation with us. All right, welcome Isabel to the call.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I absolutely adore doing these coffee conversations, and I'm so excited that we're doing a full month of them, 4 in a row. So it's going to be really fun to dive in with today's topic.
Yeah. So I really feel like when I first started learning about anxiety, we focus on where anxiety resides for us as an individual. And for me, that was really root chakra. Like it really came down to fear around money, fear around not having enough food, fear around like those generational habits from the Great Depression or whatever trauma is down in my DNA. And over time, I had other people tell me, well, anxiety resides in heart chakra, or anxiety lives in solar plexus, or whatever it was. And then recently, it's just kind of been like, you know what? I think anxiety can exist anywhere. And that's really what got us on this conversation.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I've been noticing too as well, especially since we do have kind of this really chakra-focused way of teaching and sharing here at Reiki Cafe. Is the more you get into it, the more you kind of start to realize that in a way, kind of all of these really deep emotions that we experience can present in all of the chakras. And the way that they present in each of the chakras is so sometimes subtly and sometimes really obviously different, that it's important to be able to be aware of those differences and aware of how they're showing up and how they're presenting, so that when you're experiencing something, you're not just trying to fit it into this box of, oh, okay, root chakra exists, is anxiety, but I'm feeling this in my heart, so it has to be something else. But knowing and giving yourself that permission to let those emotions come through wherever they're coming through, and then getting curious about why is it coming through there? What's the flavor of that emotion since it is in this chakra? How is it looking? And what can I do in my personal life and experience to kind of help heal, feel, reveal all of that that's happening in that chakra?
Yeah, exactly. And I think the same goes for intuition. And I feel like the conversation around anxiety and intuition go hand in hand, because when we have anxiety, we're blocking our intuition. And that's why we really wanted to have this conversation, because I think everyone experiences anxiety at some time. And it's not, it's pretty universally felt. I think everyone has felt some form of anxiety, whether it's like anxiety right before a test and having test anxiety, or stage anxiety, or like not knowing where your meal is coming from anxiety. We've all kind of experienced anxiety. And because it's so universal, it also is that component that when we experience it, we're kind of pushing away our intuition, pushing away that trust in divine guidance, because we become more fixated on the feelings of anxiety.
Yeah. And I think in that too, there's also kind of this element, and it really is this balance that you find of knowing that it's okay to be experiencing whatever you're experiencing. It's okay to be having that anxiety. It's okay to be having, maybe it's depression or whatever you're experiencing that day, and not necessarily trying to push it away so you can bring intuition in. It's kind of this balance of knowing, like, letting yourself feel those things, letting yourself have that experience, and how can you open and allow yourself to learn from and release and let that continue to move so that it doesn't become stagnant, because that's really where you start to see things like physical presentations of emotional disorders is when that energy becomes stagnant in the chakra. Because, this is actually something we were just talking about on our Reiki coaching call for our new course, is this idea that being human means that at any given time, there will always be something happening in your chakras. If you were completely open and free and flowing and had nothing stuck or happening in any of your chakras, you wouldn't be in the human form anymore. You would be pure energy. Part of being here and part of being human is having that fluidity and having those changes in our chakras and our energy, and knowing that that's okay. And just having anxiety or having depression or having these experiences that we sometimes term negative doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. But it's when they get stuck and when you hold on to them and find those attachments and start to identify with them, that's when it starts to become something that can create problems, whether that's in your energy, in your physical body, or in your relationships, is when it gets stagnant. So kind of having that fluidity and grace with yourself to know that it's okay to have those experiences. That's part of being human. And also, the healing happens when you allow those experiences to continue to flow through and evolve and release and move forward, however that looks for you, so that that flow of energy keeps going and you can welcome in that intuition.
Yes. And I just want to pause and highlight something that you said, that we have all of these different emotions, and society has labeled them that these emotions are good and these emotions are bad. And I want to just kind of throw that idea out the window and go, emotions are emotions, and we need to feel all of them. We need to feel the spectrum of them and let them move through us and not get stagnant. And I think that really is one of the most difficult things in the spiritual community, is that we're supposed to be all positive, love, light emotions. And if you feel anger, or if you feel anxiety, or if you feel sad, or if you feel depressed, it's bad and you shouldn't be there. And that's when things get stuck, and that's when things get stagnant, and you can't be in a positive vibe state and like in alignment and bringing in your intuition if you are fixated on not having and feeling the spectrum of emotions. So I just want to say all emotions are valid. All emotions are part of the human experience. And that's what brings us into this human suit, is so that we can feel. Feeling is so incredibly important as to have the human experience. So thank you for recognizing that, Izzy. Like, I think that's just always something that I want to highlight and share, that, yeah, I want to be positive and all of the good vibes. And when I'm feeling anxiety, when I'm feeling sad, when I'm feeling depressed, whatever it may be, knowing that it's okay. It's okay to experience these emotions too.
Yeah. And I think in that, the title of today's chat was anxiety, intuition, as kind of two sides of that same coin. And I think that idea is so important, because it's not that you're only experiencing anxiety or you're only experiencing intuition. It's about learning to let yourself hold the whole coin. And know that you can be anxious and still be connected to your intuition. You can be depressed and still be connected to the divine. It doesn't mean that it's a one or the other kind of state, right? That kind of duality only exists in our mind, where we feel like we can only be experiencing positive and only be experiencing negative. And they're kind of these two mutually exclusive states of being. And I think one thing that we do here at Reiki Cafe that I really love is kind of shed light on the fact that there is that gray area where you can be working through your anxiety, you can be working through your past wounds, limiting beliefs, whatever it might be, and still have your connection and still have that peace and that presence and that joy that comes when you are in alignment. And so knowing that it's not a one or the other, but it can be a both. And that's really where that awareness of, okay, how do they present in each chakra? How does it feel when I'm in one state over the other? And how can I find ways to bring myself back into balance, to bring myself back into connection that resonate with me, knowing that every experience and every emotional or energetic state you have is going to be unique to you. That it won't ever be the same as the person next to you. So giving yourself that grace and having that open and curious mind to really look in and discover, okay, How does anxiety present in my solar plexus? How does intuition look in my throat chakra? How do I kind of have an idea in my head of how these present for me? So that when I feel myself kind of tipping to one side or the other, I know, okay, it's time to bring myself back into balance. It's time to take a break, step back, look at everything, and have that openness and that curiosity to keep letting those emotions and energy flow so that you can be in that balanced state.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's dive in. Let's dive in and kind of explore through the chakras how these emotions, this connection shows up. So I want to start at root. We're going to start at root today and move up the chakra line so that you can kind of see how anxiety and intuition present in each one. So starting at root, like I said earlier, oftentimes the root chakra really is about safety. It's about knowing that all of your needs are going to be met and that you're safe. You're safe physically, emotionally, and physically. Physically, emotionally, and physically. Is that what I just said? Yeah.
You did. But I mean, that's very root chakra.
Very root chakra, right? Very grounded, right? So with that, you know, when there's something that's saying to telling your body that you're not safe, anxiety shows up. When there's emotions that are being felt where you're feeling not safe. So like an emotionally abusive relationship, you're not feeling safe. That could lend to anxiety. Same with like just not having enough financial means to provide the roof over your head, the food on your table, or that it's going to be consistent, or the car that gets you from point A to point B. So anything foundational household wise, how does your house run? Is it the systems in place, the familiarity of your home? That can all also be root chakra that when imbalanced can lead to anxiety.
Absolutely. And I think, you know, physically, what you kind of feel when you do have that root chakra anxiety is it is very much this idea of, am I safe? Like there's that feeling that you aren't physically safe, whether that is because of another person or just in your home environment or because you don't have enough food. But it ultimately comes down to this idea of safety in your physical body. Like I am physically not safe. And in that, it's almost like this deep, shaky feeling. It is quite literally that your foundation has been rocked and is shaken. And so there's that kind of deep, really, honestly, it is very deep in your body, but there's that sense of unease is really kind of that root chakra key for anxiety. It's just this feeling of like something's not right.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's very much financially tied. I know when in the past, like my go-to, if I feel financial stress, I will stop eating. And it's a very much like, I feel like past life or genetically, like during the Great Depression, if you were feeling financial stress, you put your kids first, you fed them, you starved. And so I have that tendency when I feel anxiety in my root chakra that I stop eating. It's one of my signs that I know that I'm like, okay, we need to do some financial money mindset work because this isn't actually helping anything, because then I don't have the nutrition that I need to be productive and create the financial security or just go out into the world to make those networking connections that I need to do for my business, right? So it really undermines my ability when I lead that. So going into it with a lot of curiosity and awareness is always key when we're doing this deeper healing work. So that's for me. And I would be really curious, let us know what that looks like for you.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I do like to touch on in root chakra, because I think sometimes it gets a little glazed over, is that anxiety and root chakra can also come from guilt. Like I've found that there can be a lot of guilt of other people don't have these resources. So there's kind of that one side of root chakra anxiety of like, I don't have enough resources. I don't have the money, the food, the time, the house, the whatever to feel safe. But there can also be kind of this flip side of, you know, I know other people don't have what I have, and I feel guilty for that. I don't feel like I should be having these things because other people don't. And so there's kind of that anxiety over receiving, which can also tie into solar plexus. But I think it does kind of have this root of this guilt for receiving and having resources that maybe other people don't have. So that's kind of where those boundaries start to get a little fluid, but knowing that that can also present in root chakra as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So notice like it can be multiple. So yeah, totally. Okay. So there is our root chakra. Let's talk about intuition of root chakra. For me, I feel like the intuition of root chakra is really this groundedness, that connection with the earth and trusting that she is going to provide. Like she's always shown up. The earth constantly spins. The sun always rises. It's that constant trust that that's not going to change. That is our foundation. And when we have that intuition of just knowing that we are connected with the earth, that we're in our human suits connected to the earth, really is where I draw my intuition from root chakra. How is it for you, Izzy?
I think for me in root chakra, intuition really comes down to the phrase all is well. Like all is well. It's all working out, and not just in this kind of esoteric spiritual sense, but right here, right now in your physical reality, all is well. And can you let yourself kind of sink into that? Because something that you'll find with the flip side of that anxiety is a lot of times with root chakra, there's this tendency to want to kind of come up and out. Like you don't want to relax. You don't want to sink into your groundedness. And so there's this sense of like tension and being really held up. And so when you think about all as well, it's like this, can you let yourself sink into that knowledge that Mother Earth is providing for you, that you are safe, that it will be okay, and that all is well. So it's this very much like experience of, can you let yourself drop down? And I think that's really for me how intuition shows up in root chakra is by what a lot of people would term groundedness, is how in my body do I feel? How relaxed and connected and sunk down do I feel in my body, and really feeling that rooted nature? Because there it's like there's this sense of kind of unshakable peace of all is well, and it's okay. And I think that for me is really how root chakra shows up, is in that really deep connection.
I love it. I'm really excited to get to sacral, because part of it is like the noticing the for anxiety. One of the things that if you're in a panic attack, they tell you do is go, what are the 5 things that you see? What are the 4 things that you smell? What are the 3 things that you can touch? What are like, and they bring you through all of your senses, which can be very grounding in the moment of a panic attack, but it's very sacral chakra, like your senses and just being present is kind of a combination, I feel like, of like, yes, there's that root chakra, and the solar plexus is giving you the ability to tune into your senses.
Yeah. I think that kind of like sensory experience. I mean, you hear a lot of times sensuality associated with sacral chakra, and a lot of times that kind of goes more on like the sexuality spectrum. But sensuality also means connecting with your physical senses and honoring those and letting yourself kind of feel them. And so a lot of times, I think sometimes dissociation I would associate most with sacral chakra, because it kind of is that separation from your physical senses. So there's the crown chakra aspect, which we'll get to, if you're just not in your body, but it's also this idea of you're trying to escape your physical senses. And that can kind of tie into, sacral chakra is also about that creativity. And so there can be this, if you are in, I mean, anybody's life requires them to be creative, whether that's a mom and you have to figure out what lunch to pack for your kids, or you're actually an artist painting something, or a chef cooking a new dish. There's this element of creativity that is inherent in human life, because that's what we are. We're here as creators on this earth. And so anytime there's that kind of block where you feel like you aren't quite getting it out the way you're supposed to be, or you're not doing it quite right, or you feel like there's something you're supposed to be creating and you can't figure out what it is, like that to me is that very sacral chakra anxiety of like, I'm not doing it right and I don't know why. Like it's almost, there's a little more frustration, I think, in sacral chakra anxiety versus root chakra anxiety. It's very much like something's not happening. Like I'm not doing it and getting it out the way that I want it to be. And that could be that you're not experiencing it the way you want to be with your 5 senses, or you're not creating it the way you want to be. And also knowing that that kind of definition of creativity is so much bigger than just painting on a canvas or sculpting with clay. It's really about like creating your life. And so even in things like manifestation, if there's that kind of block or guilt, or am I supposed to be manifesting this? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be doing it this, like that, like supposed to be, I think is very sacral chakra anxiety.
And it totally leads to that overwhelm feeling, right? So it's like, there's a hesitancy, I feel like, almost with like, if you don't want to do the creative projects, even if it comes to like making the lunches, like, oh my God, I have to figure out dinner again. I'm feeling the pressure of having to create. And I feel a lot of that as a mom, like that comes up in sacral chakra. Like this should be a fun, creative process, but now I'm on a time crunch. Hello, a little bit of root chakra once again there, right? There's that time factor. And then there's this like, I have to produce on at a certain level, and I have to meet other people's expectations. And what if it's not good enough? So there's the solar plexus, right? There's the solar plexus. I think I'm just going to be the bridge from one to the next.
You're just going to bring us over. But no, and I think honestly, that's even a good segue just into the intuition in the sacral chakra, because just like there was kind of, two sides of anxiety in the root chakra, there's like that not enough or too much. And then in in sacral, there's that feeling like a creative block versus having not the ability or the capacity to do it and having that time constraint. I think the same goes for intuition in sacral chakra as well, as it's like, how can you tap into and find that balance in your creativity, whether that is, again, making lunch for your kids or actually going and doing a watercolor painting. But for me, that intuition in sacral chakra is more about the feeling than it is about what I'm physically doing. It's kind of this idea of, the element of sacral chakra is water. And I think that fluidity is just such the perfect example of what intuition presents as in sacral chakra, because it is this idea of being fluid, of going with the flow, of letting yourself kind of connect and tap into and letting things happen and unfold as they need to. And so it's almost this idea of like, instead of going and painting something with a paintbrush, can you let yourself be the paintbrush? Can you let life paint itself through you as you, knowing that however it comes out is okay, and you are that perfect tool to be able to create whatever your life needs to be right now. And that kind of connection is really what I feel like intuition in the sacral chakra is it's this very fluid, creatively focused energy and connection of knowing that life is creating through you and that you're the tool, and how much can you let yourself kind of tap into that and let it flow through you.
And I feel like too that the intuition of sacral chakra really goes hand in hand with the clairsentience that so many of us experience. That clairsentience of empathy and really feeling into things. So like, for example, I was doing Reiki chakra readings in the Reiki Cafe community yesterday, and I feel it in my body. They're not your typical readings. Like I'm not using a tool. I'm not using an oracle deck or whatever. I'm feeling into someone's energy and I feel it in my body. And that's the intuition that shows up for me. So I can tell if someone has jaw tension, or if they're pregnant, or if their hips are tight, or whatever it may be. Like I can feel into their energy. And that's where the intuition really shows up for sacral chakra in my experience.
That is so interesting, because for me, I would have said that experience that I have, for me, that's heart chakra. So I think, and again, that's like such a beautiful example of how it's so personalized and unique, and how one person experience isn't going to be your experience, because, for Christine, that's very sacral chakra, but for me, that's all in my heart. So I think that's a really beautiful kind of example.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think there's a hard set rule of it has to look this way. Right. So I love that. I absolutely love that.
Yeah. And I think that's why it's so important to get curious. And as we're talking, asking yourself, does this resonate for me, or is there something else? How does it show up in my life? Instead of taking what Christine and I are saying as the hardcore truth and just going from there, is like, really think, does this resonate for me? Does it not? And know that it's okay if it doesn't. We're just sharing our experience in the hopes of getting those conversations started.
Exactly. Exactly. I think that's why, we do coffee conversations. We just want to get the ball rolling so that you have really lovely coffee conversations with your friends and your partner and your kids, and let it be expansive, right? So, which brings us
I was
to
going to say, speaking of expansive.
Yeah. So then we have solar plexus, and solar plexus is really about your identity of like who you are and how you process your own internal world of your self-worth, your self-esteem, your own personal values, your motivation, and also like what you can let go of. And so when anxiety resides here in solar plexus, it's really worry and concern about judgment from others, right? Like that is solar plexus. It screams solar plexus. Like I can't go out into the world because I'm afraid that someone's going to judge me, or I can't share my Reiki services online because someone's going to call me out for being a witch, or whatever it may be. That is very much a solar plexus anxiety issue.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about solar plexus is there's almost this more existential side to it of like, who am I?
Yeah.
I think a lot of times this is something you see when you lose a job, or even when there's a positive addition, like getting married, like when there's that big life change and all of a sudden you have this essentially new person with a new identity that you don't know. There can be this sense of, well, who am I now? And that kind of anxiety of feeling like I don't know who I am, or what are other people going to think about who I am? That kind of anxiety is very much solar plexus. And, this can be physically, it can be something from, butterflies in your stomach before a performance because people are watching you, to having like full on stomach aches and throwing up because you're worried about how other people are perceiving you, or because you've worked yourself into a panic over not knowing who you are and not understanding what you're supposed to be doing and feeling disconnected from your purpose. So solar plexus is very much that center of identity and motivation and purpose. And when you are disconnected from that, I think that's really when you start seeing solar plexus come up. Because the other thing is, if you don't know who you are, you can't expect other people to know who you are. And that in itself can cause anxiety, because it's like, I don't even know what to think of myself. So how can I possibly know what other people are thinking of me? And then it just kind of starts to snowball from there.
Right. And so some people have that tendency to shut down and go in. And then there's the opposite of that, where it's more explosive and anger and frustration and rigidity. And that can also, it's just stemming from the same thing, where it's like, people don't understand me. People don't understand where I'm coming from. And then the anger shows up, and that's very much a solar plexus trait. So recognizing that as well.
Yeah. And I think in that, knowing too that, just like we had spoken about water being the sacral chakra element, fire is very much solar plexus. And so anxiety can show up kind of one of two ways, where the flames get so big and they're just spreading and going everywhere, which is that anger side. Because, anger is a secondary emotion. Anger is a result of something. And so if you're anxious, your way of protecting yourself might be to get angry at other people. Whereas the other side of that is kind of where the embers are just smoldering and you're putting out that fire and trying to dim your light and hiding away because you're scared that other people are going to judge you, and you're scared of what other people are going to think of you. And so you make yourself small and protected, and you kind of put out that fire in your soul. And that's kind of the other presentation of anxiety in solar plexus, is hiding away versus making yourself bigger and sharing with others.
Yeah, it really kind of depends on which way does your pendulum swing, what's your tendency, and just having awareness of that and observing that and going, is this how I want to live my life? Right. And so when we bring in the intuition of solar plexus, this is like bringing in the true identity. Like, I am divinely connected to source. I am here with reason and purpose. Yes, they might sound very crown chakra as well, but really coming to like know that you're here for a reason and purpose in this physical body. And that's very much solar plexus, identifying that I am a spirit of God in human form. Like that basic, straight up, pure essence self, like that is who we are. And when we can say, I'm a divine creature, I am of the divine, living a human life, I feel like that brings so much intuition forward of just trusting and knowing like God didn't make a mistake on me, or whatever label you want to give that. Like, I'm not a mistake, and I'm worthy of the love. I'm worthy of acceptance. I'm worthy to share my truth. I'm worthy to say and stand in who I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think for me, solar plexus intuition really shows up more on that like human focus side of the spectrum. Like that I am a divine being for me is really more up in crown chakra. But I think for me, solar plexus is that idea of I am powerful.
Mhm.
I am enough. I am worthy in this physical form as this person, as this human being. I am worthy exactly as I am. And I think that's really, it's that kind of fire in solar plexus is what that intuition is knowing your power, knowing your truth, and being able to stand in that and know who you are and be confident in being that person no matter what's happening around outside you. And so I think that's for me how intuition in the solar plexus kind of shows up is in this knowing that I am and I am here and I'm allowed to be here and I'm enough and I'm powerful and all of these things. And there's just this kind of sense of it's just this really, I don't want to say grounded, but it's almost like, standing on the edge of a cliff and looking over and knowing that you are solid where you're standing and you can see everything and you can feel everything and you have that power and that centeredness and you know who you are. So it's very much this like being centered in yourself and knowing who you are and having the confidence to move forward in that.
It's this deep sense of self-respect.
Yeah.
Is
Yeah.
what it comes down to in my view of things, for sure. And when
Yeah.
you have that, then the intuition can click on because you're resonating at that level.
Right. And I think the really beautiful thing about solar plexus is that when you have that connection to yourself and when you have that understanding of who you are, then when it comes into heart chakra, you have that foundation to build on because, heart chakra, it really is about love and connection and compassion and relationships and balance. And it's really hard to find all of those things from a really authentic place if you don't first know who you are, which oftentimes can be the source of heart chakra anxiety, is this idea of I don't know who I am, so I don't know how to show up for the people around me. I don't know how to be in a relationship. I don't know how to do these things. And also that idea of worthiness, of love and respect and things like that. But I think on the flip side of that, anxiety in the heart chakra looks the most to me like traditional panic. Like, whereas root chakra is this very much like deep kind of buzzing, I'm not safe. Heart chakra is like everything is wrong and it's not okay. And I don't feel good. And I'm like, it's just this all encompassing, really huge spikes of energy, anxiety, and heart chakra, because heart chakra really is that center of all of your chakras. And so when it's experiencing anxiety or when you're seeing it through that lens, it's everything's wrong. And there's just this fear, I think, is really what anxiety is in heart chakra.
Yeah. And so it can have your heart beating really fast. Your breathing is increased. All of that is happening when you have a heart centered anxiety. And so it can look like panic attacks. It can look like you're not sure if you're going to survive, because that heart, when it's beating the way it's beating and you're having it could feel like a heart attack. It can feel like heartburn. It can feels really intense. And so a lot of people who have this heart-centered anxiety and displaying as panic, it can be around a lot of things. It can be around their not necessarily survival like root chakra, but it's just all consuming. It's all consuming.
Yeah, I'm very much a heart chakra anxiety person. So when I have anxiety, it is all centered in my heart. And it very much is this idea of I'm not okay, not physically, not in any one particular aspect, but like me as an entire being, I am not okay. My energy feels wrong. My physical space feels wrong. My emotions are all over the place. Like something's not right and it's not okay. And I'm not comfortable being here. And I think that's really that heart chakra aspect of I'm not comfortable. I'm not feeling that love and gratitude for being here right now. I don't want, there's this like aspect of like, I don't want to, like, it's scary and it doesn't feel safe, but it's not one aspect of like the physical body in root chakra, or, existential anxiety, like in the crown chakra. It's very much just like, as a whole being, I'm not okay. And it's this very much like very deep anxiety that just reaches to all levels. And so I think heart chakra can be difficult to pinpoint sometimes because it kind of touches on all the different aspects of all the other chakras. It's very much this all encompassing anxiety. And so trying to pinpoint it can be really difficult.
Yeah, exactly. It's the, I don't want to live out loud anymore. Like that living and experiencing life, which is, the epitome of heart chakra, and you don't want to do it anymore. And so there's that anxiety that shows up of like, I don't want to go out. I don't want to experience. I'm nervous. I'm anxious to live outside of my bubble, my comfort zone.
Yeah. And I think in that, it's really easy for that kind of anxiety to transition into that kind of existential spiritual depression that you see, which we're actually going to talk about in 2 weeks in our dark side of spirituality coffee conversations. But I think because heart chakra is so emotionally focused and it is so much in the feelings, it's really easy for anxiety to become fear, to become depression, to become anger. It can be all of the things at once.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So the intuition of heart chakra is very much like this. It's once again, it's living out loud. It's like listening to those divine internal nudges of going, go to the bookstore, or go sit at that coffee shop, or go do. It's very action oriented, that intuition, the heart chakra shows up. And so it's leading you to the path that you should be walking, or not should is not the right word, but that can be leading you to the answers that you're seeking, to living more in alignment. And so then I love intuition in the heart, because it's really it feels like when you go bowling with the bumpers, like that's kind of what it is. It's like you've got these bumpers to help you get moving on your path forward, and it's just bumping you along to make sure you hit your end goal of like why you're here, right? And so that anxiety kind of pulls you away from that, because you get that nudge of like, yeah, going to the coffee shop, I hear that, I feel that, and then the anxiety says like, no way. No way, I am not leaving the house today.
Yeah. And I think for me too, that intuition in the heart chakra is really this idea of like openness and expansion. It's almost like embracing life with open arms and having that willingness to bring things in, because I think anxiety kind of presents as there's almost like a shield or a wall and barrier that you put up to the outside world, whereas the flip side of that is kind of that intuition where you know that you're safe, hello root chakra, and you know who you are, hello solar plexus, and you're willing to kind of be open and experience life as it's coming to you. And so there's kind of that really open aspect. And even in that energy, that heart chakra energy feels really expansive and wide and stretched out as you're willing to let things come to you and experience life. So there is that sense of openness there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, feeling into that heart space of like, how can we, when we're facing the anxiety, how can we take the baby steps? How can we live life outside of our comfort zones, knowing where those that edge of the comfort zone is, and being like, can I dip my toe outside of my comfort zone? Because it challenges the subconscious that says you're not safe to do that. And it says, oh, look, you made it. Okay, now we can trigger that as like, okay, we now have a memory that says you can do that. You can go there. Right. And so it really is like living beyond that comfort zone, and then listening and tuning into the heart, into that expansive state of letting the intuition guide your actions.
Yeah. And I think that phrase living life out loud is really beautiful because it applies both to heart chakra and to throat chakra. Living life out loud in heart chakra is very much experiencing and embodying and moving forward and being present. Whereas living life out loud in the throat chakra is about speaking your truth and holding space for really clear and authentic communication while also being willing to hear other people's. And so a lot of times anxiety in the throat chakra, I don't know how many people probably walk around feeling like they have a lump in their throat. Like that is anxiety in the throat chakra, whether that's because you're afraid to speak your truth or you're afraid to hear the truth from someone else. There's this element of fear and anxiety around how will my words be perceived and how, will I be hurt by the words that others are sharing with me? And I think this is something that I personally am really passionate about, is this idea of words as kind of the first manifestation of your energy. Words are really the first place where energy comes into physical reality. And in that, our words really do have power. That's why when your best friend says something really mean to you, you feel it like an arrow in your body, because it really is that energy that's coming towards you. And so we all kind of have this knowledge and understanding that our words have power, and so do the words of everyone else around us. And yes, a lot of that power comes from the meaning that we attribute to it. But at the same time, it's kind of this understanding that that is energy that's coming into this physical form. And so anxiety and throat chakra is very much that hesitancy to speak your truth, or that unwillingness to hear it from other people. And it creates that lump in your throat, that tension where there's not that energy flow moving through. And I think that's something that a lot of people go, you can't have anxiety in your throat chakra, but you absolutely can. And I think it's one of the most common and under recognized anxieties that a lot of people deal with.
Absolutely. And I feel like it's not just the lump in the throat, it's the jaw tension, it's the TMJ, it's the grinding your teeth at night, it's the snoring, it's the all of this. Anything that like shows up here, like you're clenching your teeth because you want to shout and yell and like say your truth, and yet you're biting your tongue. And so where does it go? It locks up in your jaw.
Yeah. And like, I know for me, I yawn. Throat chakra anxiety for me looks like yawning, because that energy is trying to get out. And and that's how it comes for me. I don't clench my jaw or grind my teeth, but I yawn.
Yeah, I've had major jaw surgery, so I know it all too well. I'm actually missing bone in my left jaw, like 3/4 of an inch of bone. And so like, and this was all during my teenage, like when I was 18 is when I had my jaw surgery, but it was very much like I didn't know how to speak my truth in high school. I didn't fit in, right? Like so many of us spiritual, born intuitive people, like it's like I didn't have a place in high school. And so I locked so much stuff up and just held it all back and like try to fake it like I fit in, but I really didn't. So, right. And so it was all in my jaw, and it just presented that way. And so it's the grinding your teeth at night so that it's trying to release while your conscious mind is asleep, and so it's very much like, where is the anxiety for you? What are you holding back? What's that truth that needs to be said that you're biting your tongue on, and just recognizing that. And so when the intuition shows up here in throat, it's very much like this clear channel. It can be channeling. It's very much like letting whatever words need to spill forth. And so oftentimes this shows up when we're doing Reiki sessions, when we're like doing our tarot reading or whatever it is. It's just that I'm tuning into that connection with spirit so that it can just fall out of my mouth. There's nothing being held back here.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think something that a lot of people don't really connect is this idea of, in solar plexus, you can absolutely know who you are, but that doesn't mean that you're speaking who you are. That doesn't mean that you're sharing it, because it's very different from this internal knowing of who you are in solar plexus to then sharing it externally in throat chakra. And so that can kind of be where that anxiety and that block shows up. But then with the intuition, like you said, it's very much just knowing that it's okay to let your words be free. And knowing that when you have released that anxiety and you've released the fear, your words cannot cause harm, because you're not in that place. There's that phrase, hurting people hurt people. And so if you've released that trauma and you've released the anger, the fear, the guilt, the shame, whatever it is, your words won't harm. And so there's also kind of this aspect to throat chakra of having confidence in yourself and trusting yourself that you aren't going to cause harm or pain to someone else. And in doing so, others won't cause harm and pain to you, because you're standing really clear in that truth and in who you are, and allowing that to be shared. And you show people how to treat you and what to expect from you. And so if you are being really vocal in your truth, and if you are willing to stand up and know it both internally and externally, other people will reflect that back to you. And so it's kind of this balance and this trade-off that I think also kind of ties into, from there, third eye, of knowing that when you have this internal knowing in solar plexus and then this external representation in throat, then it's like seeing the big picture of, okay, how do I, in all of this knowing and in all of my experiences, how do I fit into the bigger picture? How do I fit into my life? And there starts to be kind of that connection there of knowing and understanding that it's not just you, there's something bigger happening. And of course that gets even bigger in crown, but in third eye, it's really that idea of fitting that puzzle piece into the bigger picture.
Right, exactly. So it's like this heal people, except we're never 100% healed, but we're working on it, right? We're bringing in that awareness. We're getting curious is always the first step, and then changing our behavior. And so when we can communicate those needs, desires, and wants, and allow that to clear, like, it's such a healing chakra. And I think this is why, for the last century, talk therapy has been such a big deal. And now it's kind of really moving into coaching and going like futuristic thought. And so that's where it leads into third eye, because oftentimes when we are focusing on the future and where we're going, yes, you can have anxiety there, for absolutely sure. Like, I'm nervous about the future. I'm anxious about what is to come, or where I'm going, or what if this doesn't happen the right. And so the what ifs start showing up, I think, is very third eye space of like, what if this and what if this, because all of your different parallel universe realities are available here in the third eye space. And so when you're here and you're what ifing yourself negatively, like in those, like, what if everything goes wrong versus what if everything goes right. So this is where we're bringing in awareness, going, wow, I've been what ifing way over here, over in this what if everything goes wrong space. And what if we just switch it? What if we just switch it over to what if everything turns out okay? What if the money shows up? What if the opportunity arises? What if the person comes into my life that helps support me in this issue? What if I'm open and available to having that show up? And so when we're in that what if space and allowing that intuition to show up for us, things start to come into alignment. And it's like, thank you, intuition, right? So we're moving from the anxiety to the intuition and enhancing it.
Yeah. And I think it's really beautiful that you brought up talk therapy, because, obviously I'm very passionate about the scientific side of things. And something that I think is really fascinating is, this idea that you had said about moving forward in third eye is really this like forward oriented thing. And when you actually look at this in the brain, what's happening a lot of times is that we have these neural circuits, these patterns that have been carved in our brain from our past experiences. And so whether that's a traumatic experience or it's just life in general, you have these patterns in your brain that you're constantly running throughout your day. And so when you go into talk therapy, the reason that it feels good at the beginning, but then it kind of stagnates, is that all you're really doing is bringing awareness to those circuits. But then the more you talk about them, the more you're activating them and the stronger they're going to get. Whereas when you bring it to something like coaching or EMDR or something that's a little more cognitively focused, or cognitive behavioral therapy, these things that rewire quite literally your brain, what they're doing is they're changing those circuits. They're creating new patterns and new pathways and new ways for your brain to show you the what if. Because a lot of times our what ifs are based on the past, and sometimes for a lot of us, all of our what ifs turned out negatively. And so it can be hard to try and find a positive one to draw from as you're trying to move forward. And so the more you can kind of open yourself up to new ideas and new perspectives and releasing limiting beliefs and reworking your memories and your cognitions and all of these things, the more you kind of create that forward movement and release those stuck patterns that aren't serving you anymore. So there really is that movement from throat chakra and talk therapy. Once you've brought that awareness to, now you need to bring it to third eye, and you need to look at the what if and see, are you stuck in these negative what ifs that you've carved from your past, and how can we create new ones and kind of change that neural circuitry? And so it's really interesting that that kind of follows too with current psychotherapy perspectives of how we help people work through trauma and how it aligns with the chakras as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. And I love how that all kind of comes together, whether we're talking about psychology or shamanism or, just and coaching in general, like they all have these beautiful gifts to show us, like these are healing ways forward to lessen the anxiety and bring in our intuition. And so I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, and I think it ties into like finding what's right for you, like knowing that you don't have to do all the things, but it's about finding the one that resonates for you and following that path and trusting yourself. Hello, third eye, that path that you go down is going to be the right one.
Exactly. I mean, like that's it. And I think that's why so much in the Reiki Cafe University, we have like this buffet of options of like, here's different ways that you can activate and catalyze your chakra, because not everything is going to work for everyone. You need to have a buffet of options to go, this is the thing that really works for me. And it might not work for someone else. And so just having that wisdom and having that knowledge that you can support your clients around and yourself around of how to get that chakra open and moving again. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. And then all of this obviously ties in as we come to our last chakra, which is crown chakra. And, crown chakra, I think everybody's probably, if you're in this community, you're probably very personally familiar with crown chakra anxiety, because it is that idea of like that existential anxiety, like, who am I? Why am I here? Why is all of this happening? Like those big why questions, I think, are the hallmark of crown chakra anxieties. It's like this, what's the purpose of all of us here? A lot of times I find anxiety and crown chakra is kind of focused on this idea of like, why is there so much suffering in the world? Like, what's the point of it all? Those big questions is really like, crown chakra is the existential hub of all of these questions. And so it ties into that anxiety and that depression as well. But it's this, when your energy is so far up and out of your physical body that you're just in that spiritual space and there's nothing connecting you down. It's kind of like, where's my anchor? Like you feel very unanchored and flighty. And this can even be something as simple as, not feeling like you have enough time, like there's not enough time to do the things, to not understanding, why do I have to be here? There's like that broad range in crown chakra, I think.
Absolutely. And two, there's that anxiety of, am I doing it right? Am I checking off my purpose? Like, okay, fine. I have a physical body on this earth plane that there's a bit of annoyance, I think, for a lot of people for crown chakra, going, why did I choose to come here again? Like that energy of like, am I checking it off? Like if we have a soul agreement, soul contracts, whatever you want to call them, am I checking those boxes off so that I don't have to come back and do it again?
Right. But it's very much different than that. Am I doing it right in sacral,
Yeah.
which is more like physically focused. It's like this very, again, spiritual, existential. Am I doing it right? Like, am I living right so that I'm learning what I need to learn? I'm doing what I need to do. And I think a lot of times this is where the concept of ego can get really frustrating, because it's like, if I just didn't have this human mind, I'd be able to know if I'm on the right path. Whereas when you flip intuition, it's understanding that ego is a tool. It's not a master. It's not forcing you into these thought processes, but it's a tool that you can learn to use to help your intuition come into this reality and to connect with that understanding that, yes, you are on the right path. And so intuition in crown is very similar to intuition in root, whereas, root is very much grounded and connected to the earth and to the physical. Crown chakra is very much connected and solid in your understanding and your connection with the divine, with God, with source, with the universe, whatever word you choose to use for that energy. And knowing that that is coming through you at all times and that you are safe and you are exactly where you need to be. So it is very much that kind of power and that groundedness, but it's a spiritual connection.
Right. And so you have the subconscious where the ego plays out. You have the consciousness where the mind plays out and makes decisions, which doesn't have a lot of control. It's usually just on autopilot from the subconscious. And then we have the super consciousness, which lives in the crown chakra. And so how do we let this eighth energy field, if you will, where our spirit and divine consciousness connect at super consciousness and gives us this information. So that is why it's like the meditation works. That is why like slowing down and having mindfulness practices, so that we're letting the thoughts and the autopilot take a break, so that we can connect with super consciousness, so that we can connect with our higher self, if you will. And in that, there's that knowingness of, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing in divine purpose and in divine timing, and I'm fulfilling all the things that I need to have fulfilled. And it's intuition from that place.
Right. I think the phrase, very similar to all is well in the root chakra, the phrase for me that is crown chakra is you saying, I know, like I know, like I know. There's just this knowing of your connection and your place in and to the divine.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh, this was a fun conversation.
I know, we just kind of kept going. I loved it. But I think it's really cool to be able to have these conversations and shed light on all of these different ways that you can perceive the chakras. Because I think, when you're taught them traditionally, they're taught in very similar ways. You have the color, you have the intention, you have the emotion, you have the physical organ, and you have where it is, and boom, and then you move on. But it's like when you really start digging into the chakras, you start to see that whether it's through coaching or shamanism or something else, there are these really rich and very unique perspectives on the chakras that give us all of these different perspectives and lenses through which to view our healing. And that's why at Reiki Cafe, all of our courses do have that backbone of the chakras, because they are just such beautiful lenses through which we can start to see ourselves, the world, and our healing.
Absolutely. And so it's not that there is only one right answer. Like, yes, there's the yogic perspective of chakras, but there's also like this ancient wisdom coming from the Mayans and the Aztecs, that they also saw the 7 chakras in the energy field. And so it's where does the shamanism come into play with chakras? And I get really curious. So I'm an avid learner of all things chakras. And I think that's why, like, yeah, we all kind of start out with, the Wheels of Life book on chakras. And then I just started kind of exploring and going, well, this can't just be one culture had this one set of information. Like it had to be integrated, like their energy wheels in our body. So all spiritual seekers can feel it. And so I, a lot of the shamanic works that I've studied have this chakra information as well. And so chakra just tends to be the term, but they're also energy wheels. Like you see them for different things, like, but energy centers, like they're available, and they so help us understand how to take the backdoor approach to healing. So if you have something going on in your physical organ, you can look at the emotional components and going, oh, that resonates. And so how do I heal that from a different perspective? And when I work on the emotional, then the physical can respond and ease up and heal. And so that's why these conversations are so incredibly important.
Yeah. And I think in that too, it's like understanding that it's how can you put your own puzzle together, whether that's, like Christine coming through spirituality and then moving through shamanism and finding all these connections. Whereas for me, it was, I got really sick and Western medicine wasn't helping. And so I was like, there has to be another way. And so I started looking up all my physical symptoms. And then I found like, oh, there's this spiritual connection here. And that changed my entire life and how I view spirituality and everything from there. So it can be very different approaches and very different ways to coming to the same understanding, but knowing that in that it's okay to walk your own journey, to find your own path, and know that it's just you're putting together your own puzzle. And so however you find those pieces, however you find those connections will be right for you. And like Christine said, that's why we have such a beautiful buffet of options at Reiki Cafe, is so that we can support you on all levels wherever you are.
Exactly. And so we are going to be offering the Shamanic Reiki Practitioner training once again. So this is something that we offered back in January. We are opening it up for enrollment for a later in May start date. I think that's May 23rd, if I'm remembering right. And this is an opportunity for Reiki practitioners to deep dive into their own chakra healing, to learn how to read other people's chakras, how to spin other people's chakras. And so it's very much both a personal healing experience, as well as how do I learn these skills and facilitate these skills so that I can help in other people's experience of their chakras. So if you have interest in that, we are doing an early bird pricing this week. And so you want to DM me or contact me, email me, whatever it may be, so that we can get you that information and send you an application. So this will be application only once again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is really just, like we had said, there are two, many more, but there are especially two perspectives that we share at Reiki Cafe, and there's the coaching perspective and there's the shamanic perspective. And so shamanism is very much more connecting with your power animals, connecting with your spirit team, connecting with Mother Earth, finding that grounded earth energy and combining it with Reiki and combining it with these techniques and combining it with this chakra understanding, so that you have this really beautiful holistic picture of healing both for yourself and your clients. And it's this very tangible thing, this very tangible skill set that you can bring forward into your own life for your own healing, as well as for your clients, and taking them on those journeys and learning how to analyze their chakras and doing it for you as well. So it's just this really rich curriculum that we bring you in this 5-month program. And so if you're feeling the call, if this is exciting to you, if you've been watching along with us and have just been like, yes, this is exactly what I needed to hear today, send us a message. We are always so happy to connect with you guys, answer any questions that you might have. And if you know that this program is for you, like Christine said, we do have early bird pricing going on for this week if you get your application in this week. So if you're interested, just send us a message and we'll be happy to connect with you.
Absolutely. So know too that if you are feeling anxiety everywhere, like so often we feel that all of our chakras are out of balance. And remember that when we discover the root issue, when we discover the root trauma that has occurred, it feels like when we weed that and we heal that core issue, there's a domino effect in the fact that all of the other chakras can align so much more easily when it's not bound by that one trauma. And so part of the shamanic Reiki practitioner training is to help you discover, weed out those areas of trauma in your own life so that you can get into alignment, so that your anxiety can ease up, so that you can live your brightest and your fullest expression of yourself as a healer, as a Reiki practitioner, and really feel into your divine connection and allowing that to flow through and turn on your intuition.
Absolutely. We love connecting with you guys as a community, and doing these calls, these conversations is just such a wonderful way to do that. So thank you for sharing this space with us today, for holding space for us as we share our ideas, and then for sharing your ideas in return over in the Reiki Cafe community Facebook group. We appreciate you guys so much.
Absolutely. Thank you all for sipping your coffee and tea right along with us, and we will see you next week. Take care, everyone.